Fighter jet F-16 precision strike destroys Russian secret headquarters, Ukraine's deadly blow.
August 10th, 2025, exactly 3:25 p.m. Russian commanders were meeting at an underground table in Karen, planning a new deployment. They were quite relaxed because they were underground. At that moment, an F-16 was preparing to launch from the runway. The meeting was proceeding normally, and nothing had been detected in the system's weak points. However, this secret command facility had been monitored by the Ukrainian army for months. The facility's antenna clusters and communication hubs had been mapped, and the entry and exit routes and nearby supply points had been analyzed. The Russian commanders were unaware that they had been compromised. And in a moment, a single F-16 would deliver two 454-kilogram JDAM-ER bombs into the underground headquarters where 25 high-ranking Russian military officials were located. But the attack was not a simple fire-and-forget profile. It required a long approach at low altitude, millimeter-precise course corrections to evade radar detection, an attempt to open a window without entering the line of sight of Russian air defenses, and a brief pop-up climb. At the most critical moment, the terminal phase of the F-16 flight plan had also entered 68 kilometers east of the underground command center in Kherson. The Ukrainian Air Force was ready. A single F-16 was assigned to the mission. There was no escort. There were only decoy UAVs and surveillance UAVs. All would be synchronized. The F-16 used a mobile base. The auxiliary runway was sufficient. The F-16's pre-takeoff preparations were completed at 14:57. Two GBU-62 JDAM-ERs were loaded onto the aircraft's wing stations on the mobile runway. A delayed fuse was set in the tail, and a chaff pod was attached under the fuselage. Two AI-120s were left on the aircraft's wingtips, and an ANLR-56M threat warning receiver and an ALE-50 tow decoy cassette were attached to the fuselage lines. Range and climb safety were increased with two 370-gallon external tanks. Regarding the software, the WGS-84 coordinates, GPS-INS data, and toss-swing bombing parameters have been loaded. The pilot was reminded of the importance of flying low, 50 to 60 meters. The reason? The radar horizon is limited by line of sight. When the target is very low, even high-powered S-300 or S-400 radars can only detect targets within a range of 25 to 30 kilometers due to the curvature of the Earth. If the F-16 flew at this altitude and remained undetected until it entered the standoff range of the JDAM-ER, it could manage the short illumination window of the radar's delayed activation with a combination of jamming plus maneuvering plus decoy. In other words, it could even evade S-400 radars. At 15:03, the afterburner was activated. The aircraft took off, the landing gear was retracted, and the pilot descended to the 50 to 60 meter range in a nap of the Earth profile on the first leg. However, this was not an easy game of hide and seek because flying low requires the flight computer to instantly balance wing load and thrust with every vibration. And it also increases the risk of ingesting foreign objects that could exceed the engine compressor's tolerance. Precisely for this reason, the route was charted through a clean corridor derived from previous satellite passes. Surveillance drones rose above the secure side of the border and monitored the facility's rhythm. The antenna was rotating. Service doors were opening and closing, indicating a meeting inside. However, the most fragile link in the plan was not the approach. The real risk was the pop-up climb required for the bombs to gain range, because at that moment the aircraft would rise above the radar horizon and the Russian illumination beam would definitely try to catch it. The decoy package was activated at 15:18. Several mini UAVs broadcast intermittent false signals with low RKA cluttering the radar tables, while a few others simply left optical traces adding noise to the detection confirmation loop. The goal was to delay the question, where is the F-16 in the operator's mind for a few seconds? At exactly 15:21, the ALR-56M gave its first paint warning. Illumination opened from the northeast. The pilot entered a beam maneuver and flew at a right angle to the radar, making Doppler discrimination difficult. The ALQ-31 emitted broadband noise, but the butt soon followed. As expected, a SAM launch warning came. The pilot released the ALE-50 tow decoy, slightly reduced speed, increased the turn radius to disrupt the missile's lead cone. A few seconds later, the missile chasing the decoy target fizzled out at a long range. This first-chance defense was missed. For the attacker, it meant it was time to pop up because after this attempt, the radar operator would reacquire the target and open a second firing window. At 1522, the F-16 popped up at an angle of 35 to 40 degrees to approximately 2,000 meters. This climb was to energize the wing kit that provided range to the JDAM-ERs. The higher and faster the bomb separated, the further they could stand off in the glide phase, thus pushing the release point back several kilometers and reducing the risk of entering the line of sight and being hit. The delayed fuse setting for the JDAM-ER munition was 1.1 seconds. A single munition had a high explosive power with its 454 kilogram steel body. JDAM is a system that combines tail guidance and an ER wing kit. The INS-GPS combination in the tail maintains the course based on inertia, even under GNSS jamming, while the wings carry the bomb forward like a glider. In the terminal phase, the delayed fuse detonates at the desired depth underground, taking into account the altitude profile and approach speed. Why delayed? Because the target was an underground command center. The explosion needed to occur at a depth that would penetrate the ventilation shaft and suddenly compress the accumulated air inside, meaning the top plate would collapse. The internal corridors would be knocked down by the shockwave, and the electrical ventilation backbone would be disabled together. For the defenders, the result was a small hole on the surface, a major disruption inside. For the attackers, it was the gain of multiple critical functions collapsing with a single shot. Meanwhile, the Russian commanders underground were continuing their meeting. The secret underground headquarters where the Russian commanders were located was built with a 3-level bunker gallery system. The structures on the surface served only as a cover. Communication antennas were suspended from the surface and were vulnerable to analysis. As the first JDAM-ER separated the INS reference locked, the GPS keys remained open. The second bomb was fired with a millisecond difference. The aircraft immediately descended nose down with half a ton of fuel, glided back into the 50 to 60 meter band, and entered the egress line. Ukrainian intelligence had been tracking these signals for weeks. Satellite imagery was matched with movement analysis. Signal analysis determined meeting times. The F-16 mission was completely locked onto this data. The pod image acquired the target in the terminal phase. The resolution window was down to a few seconds. After the JDAM-ER munition was released, it transitioned to independent glide. The wing deployment command was issued within seconds. GPS correction was synchronized with the mission computer. The munition was directed at a 40-degree angle toward the roof block. The impact on the surface occurred after all these processes. The penetrating warhead struck the concrete block of the secret underground facility where Russian commanders were located. At 1527, the first bomb entered within meters of the facility's main ventilation shaft axis. The explosion occurred at the center of the gallery system. The facility's pressure chambers collapsed. At the time of the attack, as mentioned, there were 25 active Russian military personnel inside. Among them were the battalion commander and the chief of staff. 3 ammunition officers and 2 level planners were also at the meeting. The ammunition scattered the center line in the first explosion, delivering the initial shock to the Russian commanders. The second bomb, which arrived seconds later, actually conveyed the message of how everything would end inside the underground facility after the initial shock. This explosion, accompanied by the message, collapsed the ground floor. The support columns inside broke. The electrical system was disabled. There was no fire, but the walls collapsed due to pressure. The high-ranking Russian military personnel could not escape outside. They did not have enough time to do so, and everything was in disarray. The second gallery inside the structure was completely collapsed. The pressure load from the upper floors cracked the ground block. 3 of the ground support columns were dislodged. The interior walls were shattered. Furniture, consoles, and tactical maps were destroyed. The headquarters room collapsed inward, swallowing the lower level. Russian officers were directly exposed to the internal pressure. Physical losses were reported as 25. This signaled the collapse of the Russian high-ranking military echelon in Kherson. There was no possibility of evacuation. The F-16 transitioned to a low maneuver 6 seconds after takeoff. The radar signature was suppressed by the wave surface. The aircraft landed on the mobile runway within 17 minutes. No tracking was performed. Pod images were transferred to backup systems. The pilot broke radio silence after the mission. The EW system was not activated because it was not needed. No rearming took place after the mission. After completing its mission, the F-16 jet returned to its takeoff airspace. The loss of the secret underground headquarters created a domino effect on the Kherson front line. Forward position planning was halted for 8 hours. Artillery fire was delayed. The supply headquarters could not give approval. Engineering activities were suspended. Drone flight permits were suspended. Without new orders, Russian troops remained inactive. Relocation decisions could not be made. Transport orders were frozen. Without a command center, the line did not function. It is important not to overlook the specific purpose of the bombs added to the F-16 that achieved all this. JDAM-ER munitions create a strategic impact in selective missions. The penetrating warhead is designed for internal destruction rather than surface damage. Its wing structure extends its range. GPS-guided flight is backed up by an inertial system. It can hit the target without deviation. It works in full synchronization with the pod image. The delayed fuse produces an explosion inside the volume. The pressure remains inside. The wave energy is fragmented on concrete walls. This increases personnel losses. Of course, the defender has options against this. Deeper shelters, more shafts, backup power, more frequent radar, and thicker close-in air defense. But every reinforcement creates a new weak link. Ventilation must always face outward. Power must surface somewhere. Fiber must connect to the outside world somewhere. The attacker finds that link and destroys it with geometry plus timing. However, let's also add this. This scheme is not immune to failure. Bad wind, weak GNSS, incorrect DTM load, faulty missile delay, or loss of the tracking UAV can all cause the same attack to fail. What works today may not work as easily tomorrow. The attacker must compensate for this with backup targets, backup routes, backup jamming. The operational outcome of this operation is to sever a battalion's decision and supply node at midday. With the collapse of headquarters, the flow of orders on the front line stopped. Instructions given to the front line were not completed. Forward bases went into standby mode. Artillery units could not obtain target information. The minefield control program was suspended. Armored units waited for movement permission. Drone reconnaissance flights were delayed. The communication line could not be transferred to the backup system. This gap lasted for 72 hours. During the same period, Ukraine exerted pressure on 8 fronts. The Russian side was unable to respond immediately to the destruction of the headquarters. The backup personnel were not ready. A new chain of command could not be established. The secondary headquarters was located far away. Data transfer was done manually. The coordination period was extended. Communication frequencies were mixed up. Frontline units fell into chaos. Double orders were sent to the same target. Some batteries were unable to fire. The F-16 created this effect with a single shot. The aircraft was only on a 20-minute mission. It used a single munition. Ukraine made this mission model standard. The F-16 took off from a mobile runway, not a fixed base. The landing point was changed during the mission. The aircraft did not stay on the runway for more than 15 minutes. 6 hours after the attack, the Olashki record was entered into the intelligence system. Satellite images confirmed the destruction in 14 frames. The images showed that the central building was completely destroyed. The diameter of the hole matched the diameter of the munition. JDAM-ER profile was identified in the trace analysis. The fuse timing was measured at 1.1 seconds. The blast depth was 3.2 meters. The target collapsed from the inside. Field reports obtained on the same day confirmed the list of 25 people. Among them were 2 colonels, 4 lieutenant colonels, and 3 engineering chiefs. These reports reinforced the F-16 mission verification. F-16 missions became a deterrent in this environment. The flights were not visible, but the impact was clear. Radar systems failed to respond. EW capacity was insufficient. Ukraine disabled the system with a single shot. Missions were completed quickly. Post-firing tracking was not possible. There was no trace, no route, no signal. There was only destruction. This created psychological pressure. On the Russian side, headquarters discipline changed. New structures were pulled back deeper. Decision-making processes lengthened. The number of officers visiting the field decreased. Concealment became a priority. This weakened coordination. Communication times increased. Reaction time slowed down. Overall, the defense reflex decreased. This worked in Ukraine's favor. JDAM-ER munitions once again created a fear effect in the field. A single bomb dispersed an entire battalion. The target could not be identified. Countermeasures could not be developed. The trail could not be followed. Radar could not detect it. The pod image provided the solution. The shot was fired without delay. Accuracy was 100%. The tactical success was complete. The F-16 mission structure in Ukraine was redesigned after the attack. The number of mobile bases was increased, fuel supply lines were duplicated, pod systems received software updates, the mission computer began to produce solutions faster, pilot training was renewed according to tactical scenarios. The radar signature suppression time was extended, targeting systems were synchronized, ammunition firing delay was optimized, mission duration was shortened, signal interference in new missions was resolved with additional measures, the jammer system was activated, noise frequency was reduced, pod data transfer was accelerated, targeting time was reduced to 1.3 seconds, delayed fuse sensitivity has been improved, heat dispersion has been increased, GPS deviation has been reduced, the accuracy range has been narrowed, ammunition reliability has been increased. In short, by firing JDAMs from F-16 fighter jets, the Ukrainian Air Force had broken not only the Russian military's secret underground facility in Kursk, but also the backbone of the Kremlin itself. Thank you for watching.